everyone. Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Excited to be back today with another client interview for you guys. Today we have Joseph on with us. I'm really excited to have Joseph here because he just finished going through the summer 2024 recruiting process as a non-target student and did extremely well, and wanted to just get him on here to kind of talk to you guys about his experience and how he was able to navigate through this entire process and secure an offer successfully. So, Joseph, first of all, thank you for being here with us today. But to just help us kick things off, if you don't mind, just kind of introducing yourself real quick, and kind of telling our audience a little bit about kind of what your profile is and who you are, and then we'll dive into some questions.
Yeah, my name is Joe. I'm originally an upstate New Yorker. So growing up, finance was the furthest thing from being around me. It just wasn't something I was exposed to, but read a lot senior year of high school, found something that I was very interested in. For context, grew up as an athlete. So naturally was a very competitive person. Went through a couple stages of wanting to be a lawyer, wanting to be a doctor, but there was always something within those two careers that never felt right for me. But stumbling upon finance really hit all the nails on the head. And with that, I ended up going to Stevens. I kind of shot myself in the foot with my college pick. I had a pretty healthy handful of target schools that I could have gone to, but I honestly wasn't sure investment banking was for me, and I didn't even know it existed my senior year of high school. I thought everyone on Wall Street was a trader, and that's all they did. So my perspective certainly wasn't there early on, but coming into Stevens, I was really fortunate to find a great mentor who was going into investment banking and is one of our like 5 or 6 alumni who is in the industry. So as you can imagine, definitely a very sparse pool to network with, which I can, talk about later with Sam as well. But as soon as I knew banking was for me, which was about 3 weeks into my freshman year of college, I really was foot on the gas trying to get ready for that. But took a lot of curves in the road, and ever since I've been able to join up with Sam, it's definitely been a much smoother sailing, and even going a little bit past the speed limit at times there, because everything that's been offered from them has been so exceptional. And really really am grateful for all the help that Sam and the rest of the team has given to me. So Sam, appreciate you having me on today.
Oh, then, and thank you for being here. There are a few interesting things that you mentioned there. So like, it sounds like you got into some target schools when you were choosing your colleges. What made you decide to go with Stevens instead? Did you just want to stay close to home, or like what was the rationale there?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting decision. I mean, I was making this during COVID, and my high school where I grew up, getting kids to college is really the main goal. It was never like, oh, there's a really great college and then there's a good college. Obviously, you have like the name brand and the persona behind these schools, but no one could ever really tell you it was going to be right for you. So
Yeah.
whenever I showed my list of where I was going, and I recruited really heavily for college with my buddy who's in an Ivy right now, and he's a medical guy, so a little bit different of a field, but same sort of competitive attitude. But whenever we'd show our lists to people, they'd be like, "It's obvious where you're going. It makes 100% sense to go to one of these big name target schools with a lot of pedigree, really nice crests for logos, all that stuff." And the end of the day, I was like, look, I'm not someone who wants to be like everyone else. I don't want to be cut out of the same cloth. And Stevens had a lot of history of being a very innovative school, history for having a really high return on investment. So not knowing exactly where in finance I could land, that was something that was really attractive for me, and has come with its pluses, has definitely come with its fair share of minuses. But again, being with Sam has negated a lot of the effects of making that decision. So I can look back in hindsight and say I'm grateful that I did make it, and I'm truly where I'm supposed to be.
Gotcha. Okay, very cool. And did I hear you right? You said so Stevens only has 5 or 6 alumni in total that work in banking?
Yeah, we're a smaller school in general.
Yeah.
So our business class every single year is probably 300 to 500 kids.
Yeah.
So naturally the pool would be smaller because of that, but we're also a technology focused school. So a lot of people tend to go into the trading side of things, not as many into the banking side.
Yeah.
Definitely was a sparse list to pick from when we were trying to go through and do the networking. So
Yeah,
that being said, the community is very tight knit that we have. So everyone's really willing to help you out, but
yeah,
not your traditional lists on lists, multiple LinkedIn pages of alumni.
right. Yeah. That just makes networking a little bit challenging, which I'm sure we'll dive into later. But so I guess the thing that people always wonder about right off the bat is like where are you going to be going for your summer 2024 internship?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate to have gotten a summer 23 and a summer 24 internship through the program with Sam. So again, that just sort of adds to the amount of results that you're going to get with him. I don't make guarantees and I don't make definitives, but I'm extraordinarily confident if you went with Sam, you would end up way higher than you would in any other position. And it's also a bad year to be recruiting too as a non-target, non-diversity student. You have
Mm,
just less opportunities at your disposal. So really happy that I was able to come through with a 24 offer, and it's with Piper Sandler. They're probably their best group in terms of coverage, really having an outstanding year in 22, actually a record year in 22. And they're very notorious for being hands-on with their analysts and giving them a lot of exposure. So I'm really excited for that and grateful for the opportunity that I have there.
that's awesome. And then you mentioned you also got a summer 2023, so that would be your sophomore summer internship,
Yep.
basically. Gotcha. And
Yeah, with the regional healthcare there, again, very hands-on in terms of the experience that I'm going to get. Actually, had a couple of summer 23 offers as well, but decided to go with them to get as much experience and exposure as I could.
And you had to kind of recruit for, I know you got the summer 2023 offer first.
Mhm.
They weren't that far apart. But you had to do what most people were doing, which is kind of recruit for both sophomore summer and junior summer simultaneously, right? Just because of how
Yeah.
accelerated the junior summer internship process is nowadays, right?
Yeah. So I was recruiting really heavy for summer 2023 during the fall of this year. And I mean, the spring of last year as well, had a couple investment banking interviews as well, but really retailored and redefined the process as soon as I got in with Sam late in the fall here. And it was all hands on deck for summer 23. And then was working towards summer 24, had my first networking call for summer 24 the day after I got my 23 offer. So
Mm,
definitely shows you how fast the cycle is moving. And that's probably one of the number one things that either deters kids away or makes it difficult for them to have success in this process.
yeah, for sure. Okay. So I think you mentioned earlier that it sounded like you didn't know you wanted to do banking yet when you were a senior in high school, but then you got to Stevens and then you basically realized you wanted to do banking like 3 weeks into
Yeah.
college, right? So that's like early on freshman year. And then I think you started working with us I guess mid-October
Yeah.
sophomore year, right?
Yep.
So like in between that time, like what were some of the things that you were already doing on your own to just kind of prepare for investment banking recruiting or for this process in general? Like what were some of the resources you were already using and what were some of the things that you already tried?
Yeah, I'm sure it was in line with what a lot of other kids had. It was going through the guides, really being heavy on those there. Other resources online for technicals like IB Vine is still to this day a great resource in my mind to practice your technical skills and really get some extra questions that aren't going to be in the guides and focus on understanding the concepts as well when you're doing these questions because it forces you to sort of fill in the gaps there. Whereas a lot of people fall into the habit of just reading the guides and memorizing the guides.
Um,
And then more on the networking side of things, I was also really heavy on the networking. But the biggest area that I honestly lacked in, and I think this is the best part of the program, was the behaviorals. And those are really what get you these jobs. You're not going to have success if you don't have a good story behind you, if you don't have the ability to answer some of the curveball questions they're going to throw at you. And Sam and the rest of the team does an exceptional job at not only providing the behavioral questions that you're going to get more often than not, but teaching you how to answer ones that are more rare and just teaching the general way to formulate and structure these answers. So
um,
that's really where I've seen the biggest improvement and what I was doing last year to what I've been doing this year.
yeah, that's great. So you're using these guides, you're doing networking on your own, you're practicing, answering questions on Ivy Vine. Um, so basically doing a lot of the same things, like you said, that most people typically already do. So like, what was it that made you want to join Wall Street Mastermind as opposed to say maybe just like continuing to do more of what you were already doing?
Yeah, so had a couple of super days prior to going Wall Street Mastermind with some really high profile top 20 banks, some
Mm.
top 15. Didn't go great in all honesty, and I got frustrated with that. I'm someone who naturally tries to learn from failure, but when you don't see improvement from failure to failure, you just sort of internalize that and have a hard time figuring out where you're going to fix problems. So it was a little bit of a stall in the road with investment banking, to be honest with you, going into my sophomore year. September was back to the September, August of my freshman year of networking with people from all different professions, traders, researchers, people in wealth and asset management, just asking them about their jobs and their careers, trying to find anything that I could sort of grasp onto because I was frustrated with the lack of results. But it honestly took a phone call from one of my good buddies who's also in the program as well. And he looked at me, he goes, "Look, do you want to be a banker?" And I said, "Yeah, more than anything. I'm just worried it's not going to happen." And he said, "Dude, if that's what's holding you back from doing this, you're going to look back the rest of your life and you're going to regret not trying it. So
Mm.
do everything you possibly can to set yourself up and be in that position." And he said very bluntly, he said, "I'm not going to tell you have to do the program with Sam, but I'm going to tell you to explore every single avenue that you have to set yourself up for success." And I asked him what he was able to benefit from the most being in your program. And it was all the areas that I was lacking in and I needed to improve in. So it was really a no-brainer, and went out 2 days later, emailed Sam and said, "Hey, look, I want to sign up and I want to do this." And Sam said, "Happy to have you." And I'm really grateful for that and haven't looked back since.
Gotcha. So basically, you had a buddy that was already in the program, and then he had a good experience, and so that kind of also, I guess, made it a much easier decision for you to kind of join the program. Because I think like a lot of people don't have that luxury of already knowing someone that's gone to the program. Like, I mean, we've been around for 5 years now, and I think we've worked with just under 1,000 students, which if you really think about it, is like not a lot, right? Compared to like the number of students that have tried to get into investment banking over the last 5 years, it's like it's a very small percentage, and so I think a lot of people don't have that luxury, and so a lot of people coming in might be like a bit skeptical, it's like, can something like this really work or whatever, but it sounds like maybe you didn't have to go through that because you actually saw someone who already has success and you actually know this person in real life.
Well, I'll
Um,
be honest with you. I actually did in the spring of my freshman year. I started talking to Sam around March, I believe it was, and asking him about the programs and read through everything I could on it. And you'll find people that want to run it through the mud at times who
mm,
haven't been through it and don't necessarily understand what they do because they see that it's like this sort of black box program, but the black box exists for a reason because if everyone knew these skills, no one would be successful because everyone would be saying the same exact things. So I can tell you firsthand that I did go through the doubt, but
yeah,
really hearing someone who went through it that I really trusted firsthand solidified everything for me. And I can't recommend to everyone else how much this program would help you enough. Really, it is what you put into it, but all the resources are there for success here.
gotcha. Okay. Um, and did you when you said like you had a couple super days already with like some high profile like top 20 banks, was that for summer 2024 or?
Yeah, it was for 23 actually. So I came in, manipulated the credits a little bit so I could graduate within 3 years, so I could recruit for summer 23. And really that did give me a lot of good experience and good perspective on what I needed to improve on going into this cycle. So allowed me to really hit the gas running and not have the first interview sort of jitters that a lot of people get. I was more of a seasoned veteran getting into this and I knew exactly what was happening.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Because I was like a little bit confused. I was like, oh, how did you already recruit? But that
Yeah.
actually makes sense. Because you had the flexibility with the graduation day. That's great. So okay, so you already knew you had already basically gone through a few processes and you knew that wasn't working, which, um, again, I think a lot of people don't have that luxury because they, a lot of times when you go through recruiting, you're going through it for the first time.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that's worth calling out is once you start going through the process, things happen so quickly, right? And so like if early on you find that you're not getting the desired results, then I would say it's pretty important to start thinking about and figuring out like what you can do to improve
Yeah.
it. And I'm not saying that the answer has to be Wall Street Mastermind. It could be whatever you end up finding, but like you don't, most of the time as a candidate, you don't have like a whole lot of time to go through a ton of trial and error. And, before you know it, like 3 months have gone by, 6 months have gone by. And 6 months is like an eternity in investment banking recruiting. It's like, 6 months ago, most of these firms are starting, and now like where we're at, I would say, a lot of the top 20 firms are either done recruiting or close to being done, right? And so just like that's the one thing that I would highly encourage everyone to just be aware of is like, gotta have a sense of urgency, don't like take your sweet time. Like this is not like a chill walk in the park or whatever. It's like, obviously do your best, but like if you realize like, hey, this doesn't seem to be working quite the way that I was expecting, then start looking for solutions because realistically, you have one shot. For most people, you have one shot, maybe two if you have flexibility in your graduation date, like Joe did, but like 1 and 2 shots at getting a junior summer internship, and getting that junior summer internship is so crucial to like determining whether you can get an investment banking or not, because that's like 80 to 90% of full-time offers that go into these summer interns, right? And um so yeah, make sure you stay on top of that opportunity basically. um so once you decided you wanted to join this program, then like obviously you talked to your buddy, he went through it, he decided that this is the thing you want to do. I don't know if you have to do this or not. Sometimes people have to do this and sometimes people don't, but like a lot of our students, when they want to join a program, they also have to get their parents on board and get their support and convince them that this is a legitimate thing. Did you have to go through that? And if so, like, was that a challenge or what was that like?
Yeah. So I went to my parents and I talked them through what was happening, and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is why I want to do it. This is how I think it's going to benefit me. And I was fortunate enough to have worked and to have saved the money to pay for the program myself and finance it through that. So I didn't have to go through the, okay, I need to make the pitch and ask you guys for money sort of thing. But they were also like, okay, is this a smart investment? And I said, yes. And they said, look, we trust you. You've gone through this. You're an adult now. And this is something that you have the autonomy to be able to make. And they they again didn't grow up in finance, so they don't necessarily understand how competitive and complex that the process is. And I think that's true for a lot of people's parents, is even those who have been in it. It's changed so much within the last 5 years that it really matters to get every single leg up that you possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, that's great though. That I mean, I think a couple thoughts there is like, obviously one, I'm sure having saved up enough on your own that helped tremendously because
Mhm.
you're not asking them for financial support. Sounds like you're really just more like giving them a heads up and explaining to them why you're doing what you're doing. But I think more importantly, sounds like you and your parents have a healthy relationship where they actually trust your judgment, which I mean that doesn't happen based on like one thing or it doesn't happen overnight. That's accumulated over, the first 18, 19 years of your life of like making good decisions and and making them understand that yeah, Joe knows what he's doing, right? Which honestly, I can't say that to be true about every single student and their parents, right? Like some parents, we meet a lot of parents that don't trust their kids' judgment at all, and so in that case, it becomes a bit more unfortunate. And a lot of times in those instances, even if like for parents and for human beings in general, like when you're trying to make a decision about something that you don't understand. Like you said, like, you didn't grow up in finance, you didn't work in finance, you don't know how competitive it is. You didn't have a program like this when you try to get your own job. Like for a lot of parents, it's hard to like
Yeah.
understand why something like this is even necessary, right? And so if you have that combined with the fact that they don't really trust their kids' judgment, then it's very easy a lot of times for the parent to just eat, despite not understanding what's really going on, they will just impose their will and kind of
Yeah.
like, veto like what the student wants, which from our perspective, a lot of times that's very unfortunate because ultimately at the end of the day, it's the student who really has to live with the consequences of this decision of whether to join the program or not, right? Like ultimately, like what job you end up getting ultimately affects primarily you,
Yeah.
and it affects your parents very, very little to none, right?
Mhm.
Like ultimately, it's going to affect you and your future spouse or partner and your kids, right? Um, and so like it always bums me out when I mean it's not really in our control, but it bums me out when um, I mean our parents always wish well for their kids, but sometimes like without the proper context, they kind of steer their kids in a direction that ends up maybe getting them a suboptimal outcome, right? And then that's always like something that we try to help the kids overcome, but it can be a challenge sometimes. So I'm glad to hear that you and your parents have that type of relationship though, because um that just it's always best to have the parents and the student on the same page, and
Yeah.
in our experience that allows the student to also be more successful in the long
Mhm.
run. So let's talk about like after you join the program then. So you come into this program, it's mid-October. Um, and then I think you got your offer, was it April? No, it was earlier, March.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got 24 at the beginning of March. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean that's like what, a 5 month period, five and a half
Mhm.
month period, right?
Yep.
So walk us through those 5.5 months, right? What was that journey like for you, and like what did you do, what were some of the things that you did once you joined Wall Street Mastermind that I guess really made a big difference for you, and like how did that differ from, I don't know, whatever you were already doing before joining Wall Street
Mhm.
Mastermind, right? Can you kind of just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, really, the first month and a half there was dedicated to summer 23. So getting a rough skeleton of the behaviorals out, getting as much as I could there, prepping on the technicals was really the big foundation to start that out so I could get that offer. And as soon as I had that, it was really about networking for summer 24 and making sure the behaviorals were really solid. So went through multiple rounds of edits on those behavioral skills. The team with Sam is absolutely outstanding. They are willing to go very in depth and teach you not just how to answer these questions, but how to think about them and think about how you should answer it rather than just writing something down on a piece of paper. So that was really helpful for me and put a lot of time into not just making those, but every single weekend recording those, listening to them, saying, okay, I don't necessarily like how this sounds here. I think I could add more here. I think I should take some out here because it detracts from the point. And that was really a big focus throughout the process, was understanding I needed to differentiate myself in some way from other students because everyone in this sort of industry is very qualified, high GPAs, good experience, in my case, better schools that I'm at. So I need some way to stand out. And that was really through my story and how I just conveyed myself as someone that people would want to have on their team and want to work with through these questions. In
Mm.
terms of the networking side of things, I also took that volume extremely heavy. In the matter of January and February, I sent out, I think, 2,500 emails in that 2 month span. And if you're in the program with Sam, Sam really preaches that you're going to get out what you put in. And even though it may not necessarily be the same as the other person, it's how it's meant to be for you. So you want to make sure you do everything you can to maximize your own output. And I truly don't think I would have had the success on those calls and gotten into the interviews that I would have without being in the program, because Sam teaches you a very structured and strategic way to go about the call. So it's not just catching up with someone and asking about them sort of thing. You're actually able to get a little bit of benefit out initially for you, but more than anything, build a long-standing relationship with these people, which isn't just beneficial now, but it's beneficial throughout the entirety of your career to have people every single corner of Wall Street you can call on if you need a favor, or can call on you if they need something too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's that number that you just threw out there. I mean, it's not surprising for me, but I'm sure it's kind of a jaw-dropping number for
Yeah.
a lot of the audience who's listening to this right now. Um, how did you even manage that? Because like um a lot of, I think like first of all, hopefully that gives people a sense of like the scale at which you have to network,
Yeah.
right? And then also like a lot of times we hear from, well, there's two things that I will call out. One, like we hear students from non-target schools who, I mean, like you mentioned before, you guys have maybe like 5 or 6 alumni
Yeah.
working in banking, right? And then so we constantly hear from these non-target school students who are like, oh, like we don't have any alumni, so I don't have anyone to network with, right? So that's
Yeah.
one. So I was like, okay, go figure. And then number two is sometimes we talk to students and we'll ask them, because we're trying to figure out what they need help with, and so we'll ask
Yeah.
them how the networking process is going, and they'll talk about how, oh yeah, I've done a ton of networking already. And we'll ask, oh, like, how many bankers have you reached out to? And like, I've reached out to 50 bankers. And they'll say it like very proudly. Right? And it's just like, we know people that reach out to 50 bankers in like a day,
Yeah.
you know? And then this is like, you're reaching out to 50 bankers over the span of like 6 months, you know,
Mhm.
something. And so it's just like, you're not even in the same like ballpark, basically.
Yeah.
But I'm sure people are wondering like, how is that even possible? Like to send out 2,500 emails in 2 months. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess if I do the math, 1250 a month, that's almost
Yeah.
40 emails a day. Basically.
Mhm.
Well, you don't have weekends either, so it's probably more than
Mhm.
that. So you're basically saying like almost probably 50 emails a day consistently 2 months straight.
Yeah. And I usually sent it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, just to sort of avoid the start of the week, the tail of the week.
Yeah.
Fridays tend to be a good day for calls. So that's where I had a lot of success. I was on the phone every single Friday for probably 6 hours a day at least, just
Wow.
going through, like, that was my Friday night for January and February. And
Mm.
a lot of people might be like, oh, that's not enjoyable. But you have to think about it this way. These are some of the most interesting people you're going to get to talk to. And if they're picking up the phone for you, odds are they're interested in helping you or teaching you, or just want to break from the work that's happening to them and want to have a fresh perspective. So you always have something that you're going to get out of these conversations, even if it's not the best call in the world. You're going to come away learning something new. And that's not only going to benefit you in finding success to get these interviews, but it's going to help you when you're in the interview as well. So networking really is a huge component of it. And it's essentially a second job that you need to take up and really need to manage your time well to be able to do.
I mean, I'm so glad you brought that up because it is essentially a second job,
Yeah.
except I don't think a lot of people realize that or
Hmm.
treat it as such, right? It's like
Yeah.
you literally need to block off a certain amount of time each week to do your outreach, to do your follow-up, and then a certain amount of time each week to have the actual calls. And each call is probably 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And then even after the call, setting aside a certain amount of time each week to like, nurture those relationships. Like it takes time. But also at the same time, you coming from a school that historically only sent 5 to 6 people to Wall Street, it's not like these firms are coming to you, like they're not fighting each other to like, hire from your school, right? And
Exactly.
so if you didn't do this, like just it was gonna be, I would say, virtually impossible for you to
Yeah.
get interviews, right? To just get looks. Like it's not like you went to a Harvard or Wharton or Columbia or one of these schools, right? Where like some people at those schools, they might not have to like network to the degree that you did because they have on-campus recruiting and
Mm,
banks come to school and do info sessions and you can just go and mingle with the bankers there and whatever, right?
yeah.
And that makes things a lot easier. But like if you don't have that, then you have to be able and willing to take the fight to them, right?
Yeah. And even in the perspective of those kids, because we have a lot in the program and a lot of kids I'm friends with through the program are from target schools, and they do have those info sessions and they do have recruiters that are especially dedicated to their school. It's still incredibly beneficial to do this networking because you're the first person on their mind that they think of.
Yeah.
Sure, Sam has an incredible story and being able to navigate through the crisis and landing a job despite no return offer. And a lot of that comes down to who he knew. There are a million stories out there like that, that I just knew the right person who was there at the right time. But if you don't know anyone, you're never going to have a story like that. So that
Yeah.
really goes to reaffirm how important it is to network, no matter the situation that you're in. And it's something that we preach heavily here to the kids that we work with in our finance organization at Stevens, but it's something that should be preached universally at every single school to really make yourself stand out and be the forefront of the mind when they're thinking about who the next investment banker from your school is going to be. And you want it to be you, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, like, it sounds like you had the summer 2023 internship lined up,
Mm,
at a boutique bank, which obviously that's really helpful for your resume. You were
yeah.
obviously networking the right way. Um, and I'm sure you were doing it like in a very streamlined and efficient way because there's just no way you can contact that many people otherwise. Um,
Mm,
and so those are the two things that obviously determine how many interviews you actually get selected
yeah.
for, right? So that's usually like the first challenge
Yeah.
that people have is that you got to be able to get interviews. A lot of people kind of fall off even just at that stage because zero interviews, right?
Yeah.
But coming back to the second challenge that people usually struggle with, which is like actually passing the interviews that you do get, right?
Yeah.
Um, in fact, dare I say, like I think a lot of people focus a lot more on passing the interviews before they're even able.
Exactly. You put a cart before a horse a lot of times in this process. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people are just like, oh, I gotta learn all my technicals. And it's like, and then they do like no networking. It's like, well, you're never
Mm,
gonna use your technical knowledge. Or
yeah.
like another example, putting cart before the horse is like a lot of people say, oh, I'm gonna learn how to do financial modeling. And then you're basically learning how to do the job before you even gotten the job because they
Yeah.
don't actually ask you to build a financial model in your interviews, right? And so it's like
Mm,
there's a lot of these like order of
mm,
operations issues that I see
exactly.
people fall into that
Mm,
trap. But coming back to the interview press side of things, um, I mean, you talked a little bit earlier about like really making sure you improve your behavioral so that you could stand
mm,
out that way. Um, just to clarify, I think obviously like both behaviorals and technicals are important, but I think what you're saying is that on the technical side, you still need to know your technicals, but that's
mm,
not going to be the thing that makes you stand out necessarily because at the end of the day, like anyone who's actually like worthy of being your competition in these processes, they're also all going to know how to answer the technical questions. And it's really hard for one person to be like, oh, I know the DCF a lot better than you do. Like the DCF is a DCF, right? Or
no,
like,
you don't know. It's a check the box kind of thing,
right,
as you'll hear a lot. And if you are going to get a job from your technical skills, it's a once in a blue moon thing that very, very rarely happens and isn't something you should rely upon. I know maybe one or two people who have ever had that happen to them out of everyone I've known who's gone through these processes. And it's because the guys wanted to grill them so much that they didn't have time for any of the behavioral side of things.
yeah.
That's the only circumstances that it happens, and it just rarely happens, as sure Sam can emphasize as well.
Yeah, and I mean like, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you shouldn't learn technicals. In fact, we spend a lot of time in our program
Mm,
teaching the technicals as well. However, and we can touch on that in a second. However, I will say that especially coming from like a non-target school student like yourself, if you think about it, like the reason why the odds are stacked against you is that like no one's ever been fired for hiring the Harvard kid or hiring the Wharton kid, right?
exactly.
Like when in doubt, if we have two candidates that seem pretty similar, about the same, then the safe choice for the interviewer is to go with the person with the pedigree.
Exactly.
Because they're not going to have to answer questions later
Mm.
if it didn't work out, versus they hire the guy from Stevens and
Yeah.
sometimes you don't pan out or whatever, they're going to be like, wait, why did you why did you take this guy over the Harvard kid, right? And so
Yeah.
that's where it's like you're somewhat handicapped by these biases that people have.
Mm.
Uh, and so that's where you have to not just be like on the same like level playing field as other people, you have to be better
Yeah, exactly.
in your competition, right? You have to give them a reason to take that chance on you, right?
Yeah,
And really the only way to differentiate yourself to that degree is with your story and with your answers,
exactly.
because that's the part of the interview where everyone's going to have different answers versus the technicals. If I ask, 5 different people the same set of technical questions, they're all probably going to have, if they're qualified, they're all going to have very similar or the same answers probably.
Yeah.
So then I guess the question is like, I think for a lot of people, what they have trouble visualizing is like, okay, I get it. Like behavioral interviews are super important, sure. But like, I mean, how much better can my behavioral answers really get? Because I feel like I'm already pretty good at behavioral interviews. Like it's just talking about yourself, right? Like I know how to talk about myself. I'm a sociable person. Joe, you look like a sociable person. Like you're not like awkward or anything. Like you probably know your story. Like so like, I mean, how much is there really to improve, so to speak? And like how do you make those improvements? Because I think when most people um I think that the way that most people approach behavioral interview prep is like, okay, look up a list of the common questions, right? And you can get
Yeah.
those anywhere. Like go to interview guides, go online, whatever. Okay, type it in chat GPT,
Mm.
whatever, right? I'll give you a list of questions. And it's like, uh, and then you just like write out what you think makes sense. Like
Mm.
whatever you want to say to that answer. And then usually like your first draft is gonna be pretty close to your final draft.
Yeah.
Because you're the person that came up with the answer in the first place, right?
Mhm.
Like that wouldn't be your answer if you didn't already think it was pretty good. Like usually people are already putting their best foot forward. Like you're not gonna hold back and try to give a suboptimal answer. But like so ha- having gone through the process, like what's the secret sauce, I guess? So like is there really that much that you can improve on that side? And like if so, like how is that actually happening?
Yeah, I'll be honest. It really is night and day difference from before you get in the program to when you're in the middle of the program to when you finish up and you got your offer. You're gonna look back and you're gonna see like there's so much improvement that you've made just from week to week, even. And even now, when I go back in, even though I'm done and I just stay on top of these questions and I stay on top of my answers because you never know what's going to happen in your career. I look back and I'm like, okay, I could get better and I can improve here. And I'm only able to do that because I've learned from all the coaches that Sam has. And I put myself in their shoes like, okay, how would they think about this answer? How would I compare this answer to other people's answers that I know they've given? So there's a ton of room for improvement there. And even if you are naturally someone who's a very social person, who I've worked with a lot of kids who naturally are, and they're just naturally very easy to talk to. They articulate themselves well, they're charismatic, you want to like them. The stories still need work because they need direction and they always need to funnel into what the interviewer wants to hear, which is at the end of the day, you're someone they want to hire and they want to work with because those two things aren't necessarily the same.
Mm.
And a lot of kids, when they do the behaviorals before, even if they're good, they hit one or the other, right? Like they show, oh, you should give me this job because I'm qualified and I'm smart. But then they also sound like someone you don't want to sit on the desk with until 2 a.m. Or you sound like someone they want to sit on the desk with. They get along well, but I just don't think you know the job well enough to be able to do it and not just be someone who's the office culture hire at the same time. So there's definitely a big paradox there that the program helps you improve on. And every single word you put down on that page, you're probably going to get a 10x return out of it being in the program there because of the very methodical and meticulous process of writing these behaviorals. And then after that, it's on you to make sure you practice and rehearse them. But that's what you'd be doing anyways. But you're working with a much stronger foundation and base being in the program.
Yeah, I think like the biggest, basically the gist of it is like the biggest difference is just rather than you trying to identify what you need to be improving about your answers, which is very, very hard to do, being that you are the original author, like have you need to have like someone else do the critiquing for you, right? And not just some random person, but that someone else needs to be someone who has interviewed a lot of people or has seen a lot of different answers from different candidates so that they have this like this cumulative knowledge of like almost like a database of answers that they can benchmark your answers against, because
Yeah,
at the end of the day, again going back to what we keep harping on, the point of the behavioral interview is to make sure that your answers stand out. And I think for most people, the challenge in figuring out whether their answers stand out is that they only know what they're planning on saying, but they have no idea what anyone else is saying.
exactly.
So if you really think about it, like if you only know what you're saying, but you don't know what anyone else is going to be saying, like how can you know whether your answers are going to stand out or not? Can't, right? And so you need to find someone who has that knowledge and has seen, a ton of answers, ideally not like a small sample size, but like a very large sample size of, dare I say, if not dozens of students and hopefully hundreds of students, and then like have that person give you the feedback, because they're going to be able to very quickly point out like, which answers are great, which answers are not so great, and the ones that are not so great, like what are the things specifically that needs to change about it. And a lot of times what you're going to find is that these aren't like, these are things that like aren't super obvious to you, but once someone points it out to you, then you're going to be like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, duh, like I don't know why I didn't think of that, right? But those are the hardest things to fix, because it's like sitting right there in your blind spot, but you're just not going to see it.
exactly. And my first edits had a ton of red text, ton of comments on them. I mean, I'll open up that document and every time it defaults to having the review mode on it. So I'll see the 6, 7 strings of comments on every single question that I've gone through. And it's really cool to be able to look back and to see how much you've improved and how much better those answers sound, number one on paper, but also when you read them out, how much more fluent and congruent that they sound, having all the edits on them. And those edits come from people that have been there and are some of the most successful people with incredible backgrounds that, number one, it's great to be able to learn from, but number two, they have a ton of knowledge they can share with you and just really transform the skill set that you're going to bring into the desk.
Yeah, for sure. I guess then on the technical side, because we've been talking just mostly about behaviorals, on the technical side, like what was the difference, I guess? Because I mean technical is technicals, right? Like the concepts are the same, whether you learn them in Welsh Mastermind or you learn them elsewhere. Like, couldn't you just learn that by, I don't know, memorizing the guides or something, or whatever you were already doing before? Like, was there any difference in how you learned the technicals inside of the program versus when you were doing it on your own?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do in the program outside of the modules that are provided is to really get involved in the Slack and help other people out with the technicals, because you just learn so much more teaching it yourself than you ever would teaching it to yourself. So that really helps you to get a solid understanding of these questions and of the concepts behind them. So come into an interview, you're not going to miss technical questions. I mean, there's one question in all my interviews this year between 23 and 24 that I missed on the technical side of things, and it was because I took the total side of days receivable instead of the average side and the days receivable, right? So that's the one question I missed out of everything, and a lot of it's because of the program and how well the modules are taught and the resources you have at your disposal to sort of reaffirm those skills through helping and teaching others. But
Wait, did I hear that right? You're saying between your sophomore summer recruiting and your junior summer recruiting, all of your interview combined, you only missed one technical question.
yeah, I mean, my first interview was a little brutal. I won't lie to you. The first one I had last year, and so from there, I was like, look, I'm never missing another technical question again. And That was kind of one of the post-it notes I put up on my wall to have one of the goals there to be like, okay, we can't miss those questions because you get those, you put yourself in a really good position. But I do want to stress, like you're allowed to miss one, but missing two puts you in a bad position. But missing one it's like you're kind of taking a bigger risk than you really want to. Whereas if they can get on the phone and they can tell you like you're the most technically and behaviorally solid candidate we have, why wouldn't you want that,
Yeah. I think you bring up a really good point though, which is inside this program, yes, you're learning everything, but part of the learning process is also having the opportunity to teach other people.
Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is that like they think they're just gonna come into this program and like learn everything by doing a bunch of one-on-ones and whatever. And like, yes, there's one-on-one support, of course, and there's customization, personalization, but a lot of the value and benefits of being in a program like this is actually the community itself. Like
100%. Yeah.
going to a school like yours where there's very few people who are actually one historically have gotten into banking and two are currently trying to get into banking, like you don't have like the community that some of your competition would
Mhm.
have by going to a target school, right? Or they have like everywhere, like our clients from Wharton, like every single person, every single friend they have, like everyone's trying to get into banking, like,
Mhm.
and you're constantly talking to people and you're just in the loop. And but furthermore, like I think the other thing that our clients do and the culture that we built is that like it's just such a collaborative community where like everyone's asking questions, but also everyone's like answering each other's questions, right? And of course, like the coaches are also there, like checking, uh, like doing quality control and making sure that people are not saying the wrong things. Which admittedly can happen sometimes. Like someone might try to answer someone else's questions, and then it might not be the right answer, right? But if you really think about technicals, like I think the biggest difference is most people when they learn technicals, they just say like take the list of 400 questions, 400
Yeah.
questions, like memorize the answers to those specific 400 questions. And so if you ask them one of the 400 questions, yeah, sure, they can answer it, no problem, because they like committed the answer to memory. It's not ideal because one, it takes a very, very long time to do that, and two, chances are most of the time you're not going to get a question that's straight out of the really,
Yeah.
really popular interview guys because
Yeah.
your interviewers already know that every student is already doing that,
Yeah.
right? And they themselves read those guides when they were coming up and
Mhm.
they know exactly what's in there. Um, and so we've actually found that the questions have gotten harder over the years just because the interviewers also adapt to what the candidates are doing, and they still need to have a way to differentiate between who's actually good, who actually knows this stuff and who doesn't, right? Now, with that said, we always say like the best test for whether you really know something or you really understand something or not is if you can teach it to someone else who
Yeah.
is a beginner or who knows nothing about the subject matter. And so that's where it's like, because like if you can explain what a DCF is to your younger brother who's done nothing in finance or your parents who didn't have a career in finance, and like that means you actually understand it, right? Because you
Yeah.
can explain it to other people. And so that's how you know whether you're ready or not, because you can constantly in our community because people are asking so many questions every single day. You're seeing all the questions that people are asking, and like every time someone asks a question, you can essentially like quiz yourself and be like, do I know the answer to this question? How would I
Yep.
answer this question? Right. And then you can go in and actually answer the question. Right. Or like maybe someone else already answered the question. You can go in and see how they answered it and see if your answer is the same or if it's different, like why is it different? Who's right, who's wrong? And so like you constantly getting this feedback loop on like where your knowledge level is at, and then you're constantly identifying if there's a gap, like, oh wait, I don't know how to answer this question. Oh, maybe I need to like go back and study up on this specific concept a little bit more.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like you do that day in, day out over, a period of 5.5 months, like it's almost impossible to not be very well versed in this kind of thing. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say the coaches are great. I mean, there's a ton of knowledge to go around from them. So being able to ask them, hey, can you explain this more in depth? Like one of the most recent big topics is been one of the coaches explaining the enterprise value equation more in depth and teaching you okay, this is how it's taught, but this is really how you should think about it from a more conceptual level to understand it. And there's like a 40 comment thread on it that has been really well built out with a ton of links to different resources, a ton of great explanation to it. So that's one of the examples of things that you get from being in the program that everyone sort of knows. But more outside of that is, like Sam said, the community you're going to have in this program. Just as someone who's in a non-target school, I never really knew what it was like to have a bunch of people going into banking, and that's changing now with the finance organization we have, with myself and my buddy who are in the program, and a couple other kids at our school who are in the program. So our community in banking is definitely growing, and it's been nice to have that sort of collaborative effect. But a lot of that's been able to become better because of how much we've learned from the community in the program. I've been able to hop on mock interviews with kids from all different schools, and whether I'm mocking them or they're mocking me, it's been extremely beneficial in learning. And more than anything, you just get a like-minded group of people that you can reach out to, you can text. We've done some meetups, and everyone is, it's great to be able to hang out with them. It's great to be able to meet Sam and all the rest of the coaches as well. So that's really one of the most underrated things you're going to get out of being in this program, is the community you have access to. And it doesn't make sense to not want the best network you can have. And this
Yeah.
really gives you a network of, like Sam said, upwards of 1,000 kids who are all going into banking at some of the top shops on the street that you have the chance to formulate a close relationship with.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Speaking of meetups, we're having another one like about 3 months in New York. You're gonna make it out to that, or
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm gonna be working a lot, but I know you guys all are too, so I'll make sure to get out there.
yeah, we
You
made it
should be
on a
in that.
Saturday so that hopefully people can at least get some time off on a Saturday.
Yeah, he made sure to get the protected days with it. Yeah.
But
The last one was great, I will say. It is great to be able to meet everyone, and just the opportunity to get to know other kids in the program and hear their stories too
yeah,
has has been really beneficial, because you just sort of get where your shortcomings are and you learn from others. And that's really the most beneficial thing you can have as someone at a school that's just not at the disposal and in the cards for you. You have to get creative with your outlets and your mentorship.
right, for sure. Yeah, environment is so important, right? Like,
Mm.
they say you're the average of 5 people that you spend the most time with, and I think that's true for almost anything you do in life. And so, like, finding your tribe and finding the right community, and like just a group of like-minded people that are just kind of like working hard alongside you,
Yeah,
the same goals. I think that's that cannot be that is so valuable. Like it's and I think like a lot of people don't realize that, but recruiting can be such a grueling and oftentimes lonely process. If
yeah,
you're going through it by yourself, and maybe you're getting rejections, maybe like you're not hearing back from bankers, if you want to respond to your emails, or like you don't like things aren't working, you don't know what you're doing wrong, like it's really easy to just get down on yourself, or like self-doubt. This is human nature, right? It's not your fault, but like self-doubt sometimes starts creeping in, or you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not cut out for this. I mean, even the students in our program, like, yeah, like, these interviews you're hearing about, oh, it's all like rainbows and sunshine, but like, no, it's not, right? Like, we have students that come in the program and they go through like multiple rejections before they eventually get the offer, but like halfway through that process, they're telling us how they're thinking about giving up because I keep getting rejected. And I mean, this just happened with this kid from actually a Target school the other day, and he's like, yeah, I don't know if I can do this. He gotten rejected from like every single bank or whatever. And then also, and then all one day he's like, literally the same day he was saying that to me, he got an offer, and he's like, I take back everything I just said. I was like, but like the whole time we're like telling him like, no, don't give up. You're this close. Like this is
yeah,
normal. You got to keep going. Like a lot of times you're 3 feet away from gold, and you
exactly.
don't want to like turn back like right before you cross the finish line. But if there's no one there to tell you that, like it's so easy to just give up, right?
Yeah, and you have a great support corner with the coaches too. They're always there. They're always willing to answer questions. Sam's been willing to hop on calls with me, but I've been like, look, I just don't know what to do right now. I'm kind of lost. I need some advice. So that's definitely something that's really valuable throughout a process that, like Sam said, is going to chew you up and spit you out. It's definitely not easy. So I can't imagine running through it on my own again. And I don't know where I would have been if I didn't have all you guys in my corner.
And it's not supposed to be easy, right? Think about the saying, like, nothing good comes easy, right?
Right.
It's one of the best jobs you could possibly have right out of college, whether you're talking about it from like a compensation standpoint, like a prestige standpoint, exit opportunity standpoint. So like it's not supposed to be easy, right?
Yeah.
And so, like the point is not to make it easy, and we don't claim to make it easy, but I think we just try to make it simple. We
Yeah.
just take the guesswork out of it. You don't have to do a bunch of trial and error on your own. You don't have to like wonder like what am I doing wrong? It's just like you have the feedback that you need. You still have to put in the work,
Yeah.
but as long as you're willing to put in the work, then you have like everything you need in front of you to be able to get the offer, right? Like that's the whole point. So that your efforts aren't going wasted, basically, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I know we're like pretty much way over time, but one last question I have for you. I always like to end on this, but is there like one piece of advice or like what's like the best piece of advice that you have that you can pass down to other students who are maybe currently going through recruiting still or about to go through recruiting? Could be something that someone else shared with you that really helped you, or something that you just figured out on your own along the way. Is there anything like that that you want to kind of share with the audience?
Yeah. I think, look, if I'm a kid from upstate New York in a small town with no one in finance around me at a no-name school, and look, if I can make it through being there with Sam, anyone can make it through being there with Sam. But I will say the biggest thing I had going for me was having the right mentality behind things and understanding it was never going to be easy, and almost in a way embracing the difficulty and embracing the failure you're going to inevitably experience here. And every email that doesn't get answered is just an email closer to one getting answered. Every interview you don't get is an interview closer to getting the offer. So when that offer does come and they do call you, there is no better feeling in the world. And that's what I've told my buddies. I'm like, look, you just don't get it until you get it. And they've echoed that there. I mean, I've been on calls when my friends have gotten their offers for this year as well. And it's just an immediate breakdown, and all the stress that you carry, everything you carry just sort of melts away and you're loose. And it really is second to none at this stage in your life as a young man or a young woman. So I really do want to stress that the mentality to be able to weather the storm and push through and see the blue skies ahead, and always drag yourself for whether it's an extra email going out the next day or an extra 5 minutes studying or looking through those questions in extra time. It's gonna be worth it. But at the same time, having people that are in your corner like Sam is what really helps to make sure that mentality doesn't fade away. So that being said, again, appreciate you having me out today, Sam. And it's always been a pleasure talking to you and being on the program.
No, absolutely, man. And thanks for sharing that. I mean, I'm so glad I'm so glad you mentioned that indescribable feeling of what
Yeah.
happens when you get your first offer, right? And I've been there before. I remember that still to
Mhm.
this day. When you work so hard for something and you get put through the grinder, and you know all the effort that you put into it, and to come out the other side as one of the very few people to
Yeah.
have the opportunity to work in an industry like this, like there is nothing like it, right? And we get to, we're fortunate enough as coaches to also be able to kind of share in that feeling with you guys every time you guys get an offer, because we get these like
Yeah.
static, Slack messages from you guys telling us like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like, all caps, whatever, like I just got an offer.
Yeah.
And that lights us up too, because we're like, oh, like this is why we do what we do, right? Is to
Yeah.
um it's like it gives us so much just fulfillment, because
Yeah.
and also I think the reason why it feels the way it feels is because we know how impactful and how significant
Yeah.
starting your career in banking is going to have
Exactly.
like all of your lives, right?
Yeah.
Because we've been through it ourselves and we benefited from starting our
Mhm.
careers there, and it's life changing, to be honest. Like I'm not trying to, use hyperbole or whatever, but like it
Yeah.
really is, right? And so, and this stuff matters. Like your career matters, your career trajectory matters. It affects your success, which then affects every other aspect of your life, your family life, your relationships, your health. It affects everything. And so, and the life of, your kids in the future. And like, just, so like, there are very few things that I would say are more important than this. And then, so I would just encourage everyone. It's like, I think one thing that I see a lot of people struggle with too, is just to kind of like, to kind of add to what you said is, make sure that this is one of your top priorities, right? I
Yeah.
think that like the people that I've seen be successful in recruiting, like for a period of time, it doesn't have to be forever, but for a period of time, recruiting was their top priority. For
Mhm.
you, it was the last 5.5 months, or maybe even longer than that. But it's like, and when I say it's your top priority, like I can tell whether something is your top priority based
Mhm.
on how much of your time you're allocating to that thing.
Yeah.
If you show me your calendar for 168 hours that you have in a week, like how many hours a week are you actually spending on recruiting relative to how many hours are you spending on everything else? And I can
Yeah.
tell you how important this thing is to you, right?
100%.
So anyway, man, this has been a great interview. So I really appreciate you for doing it. But guys, for those of you that are still kind of with us, if you find yourself in a similar situation, maybe you also go to a non-private school, maybe you don't have like barely any alumni that you can reach out to, you don't have like a community at school that can serve as your support system. Maybe you've just been doing stuff on your own already and you haven't gotten the results that you wanted. And you are ready to make a change. You know that there's urgency in the recruiting timeline and you don't want to just go through a lot of unnecessarily trial and error and kind of waste the opportunity that's in front of you, then I want to encourage you guys to reach out. What you can do is you can schedule a call with our team. You can go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST, so it's mastermind.com/apply. And what we'll do is we'll get on a call with you. We'll talk about kind of what your current situation is and what it is that you're looking for help with. At a minimum, we'll give you some advice on what we think you should be doing. And then like, at most, like if it's what you want and if we think it's a good fit as well, then we can, even have a deeper relationship where we guide you through the entire recruiting process, right? But either way, our goal on these calls is just to help you walk away with some value and be more knowledgeable about what you need to do before you came on this call, right? Then before you came on this call. So with that said, we look forward to talking to all of you and hopefully helping you guys out. And Joe, I want to thank you again for taking the time, spending over an hour with us on this call. And just congrats again on an amazing offer at a really, really great firm. And I'm really excited to see what you accomplish both this summer and next summer, and beyond, really. And I think obviously you got a ton of success ahead of you. So I look forward to just keeping track of everything you accomplish, really. So
Thanks.
awesome. So guys, that's gonna be it for this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. All right, talk soon.